We are here talking about computer science essentials for grades 3 through 6. STEM and cyber safety lesson plans will work remote, on-site, or hybrid. So we've got a great agenda and set of topics today. But I want to again mention real quick, of course, what's really important is whether you're on-site, remote, or required to change midstream. Using curriculum that can seamlessly toggle between various instructional schedules so that your students and teachers can get the core knowledge they need to be well prepared for a world drastically changed by technology is highly needed for this multidisciplinary classroom. So that's what we're going to be talking to you about today. We'll leave about 10, 15 minutes at the end of the webinar for questions. We are recording this webinar. So if you have to drop early, you miss anything, want to share with a colleague or two or three, we'll be sending you an email along with the lesson plan sample that we'll be reviewing later in the webinar. So you'll get all of that with an option to download it. So you'll have all of those resources sent to your email that you registered with. But we have a great set of speakers today. And I'm going to do my best to multitask here. So we've got Kara Ball, who's a STEM education specialist. We've got a curriculum writer, Olivia Dobbs, will be presenting our curriculum and our lesson plan. Our founder and CEO, Alan Sitomer, former Teacher of the Year with us. And of course, not last, but certainly not least, is an educator, an advocate, our very own Jessica Moreno, who will be talking to us as well. So they're all on video. We can all wave, which is sort of the silly thing we do on video now. I don't know why that makes sense, but that's what we're doing. So I'm going to kind of quickly skip to the agenda here. And I do have a couple of poll questions. So again, what you're going to learn today is really about how educators with no previous, coding instructional experience can bring a multidisciplinary classroom to life. Again, whether it's virtual, live, or hybrid, we have all of those options because we know districts today still, even if they've maybe announced the plan for the fall, it still potentially can change. And you need to be able to toggle back and forth, whether you're going to start virtual and go to classroom and then maybe go back, or whatever the plan is, we can be here to support that. We're going to talk to you today about how the core computer science knowledge students in grades 3 through 6 need in order to be cyber safe in today's technological world. We're going to talk to you about how early computer science education builds a strong and necessary foundation that truly helps students across other advanced topics. We're going to teach you about how to teach and instill digital citizenship in order to make this remote instruction more productive, efficient, and engaging. Again, whether you're going to have hybrid on, virtual or not, you're still going to have some form likely. Now we're also going to be talking to you about how using a 5E lesson plan model empowers educators to balance the standards-based academic objectives with student engagement. So real quick, we got a lot of topics here, but I wanted to kind of get to real quickly, I skipped a poll question. And if you guys could just type in a chat, it'll help us to help you know where you're coming from. If you have any thoughts on, just generally what's your experience with teaching computer science. And it could either be no experience, some experience, or very experienced. It'll help us kind of tune our content to you and where you're coming from. So, feel free to type that into the chat. Again, what's your experience? Some, none, a lot. All of that will come to us as the panelists when you type into the chat, by the way.
Chris, here's a question. What if you've been reluctantly forced due to remote learning to be the teacher at home of the kids that you used to send to school and have professionals handle?
That's a great question. Probably, so the answer would be handling it to the best of my ability, making my way through it, right? And again, I think that's what Kara can talk to us about a lot of, Kara has a lot, having had to do this without what Mastery Coding provides. And she's going to talk to us about that very perspective, I think. So then, what are you most looking for from curriculum for the school year? I'm sure a balance between being able to address the climate, being remote, on-site, or hybrid is part of it. But is there anything else? What else might you be looking for? So if you have thoughts around that, again, help us to help you. The more insight we can get from you, the better. And what's your top need? If you have any sort of top needs regarding this particular topic of computer science education, is it about cyber safety? Is it about actual curriculum? We can also talk to you further. There's a lot also about Title I funding, right? How do you need curriculum that specifically addresses and can capitalize on those funding requirements? So any thoughts around that would be great. I'm just going to give you all just another minute or so, because again, we do have quite a bit of content and I want to get to all of it for you. So thank you all for those thoughts. Again, if you do have questions for our speakers at any time, feel free to type that into chat. We'll try and get to as many of them during the conversation here as we go, but we'll save those questions for the end. So if you have any questions, certainly you can welcome to type them into chat. Okay, so first up, I would like to introduce our founder and CEO, Alice Sitomer, who's the California Teacher of the Year Award winner, and our hero, who's got a lot of experience and who's ultimately a dad himself, trying to balance remote teaching, hybrid, and virtual. So welcome, Alan. Thanks for joining us.
So it's funny, Chris, you mentioned at the beginning you have a new puppy that is destroying things behind you. I now live in a world where at any moment, despite the numerous conversations I've had with my third grader, she could bust in right now and be like, I know you told me not to bust in, but I got a question. So it really sets the table for like the notion of even today, the current US curriculum, the school that we went to, like cybersecurity, remote teaching, this didn't even exist back when we were in the school desks, at least certainly for me, and the idea of data and safety and all this stuff right now. But now the way that the world has changed in terms of computer science is not only something that underpins the teaching of every subject matter. We're currently, due to the pandemic, literally using the tools of computer science to manifest student learning. So one of the biggest points, I think, that is a critical need, as you'll see in the next slide, is to make sure that we provide solutions that are easy to implement, that are turnkey, that are user-friendly, but most significantly, that can be delivered in any instructional model that an educator or school is going to pursue. Now, as it stands right now, on the 22nd of July, 2020, most schools are probably going to begin the year virtually. Not all, but most schools. However, they absolutely have their sights set on when can we get back live? When can we get back live? When can we get back live? And on their way to getting back live, they certainly might find themselves using hybrid schedules where it's remote and AB days. Now, the important point is if you're purchasing curriculum, using curriculum, you don't want to ingest something that only serves one of these needs. Like it's perfect for virtual, but if my teachers go back to school, we got to go analog and we got to refigure where were we, or if we are virtual now and we go back, but then we have to come back again. So at Mastery Coding, we've worked really hard at making sure that everything you see today not only can be individually delivered, whether virtual, live on site, or hybrid, but it can seamlessly toggle so that if on Tuesday you're at home and Wednesday you're back in class and Thursday you're back at home, you can have 3 lesson plans that coherently went from home to school to home. And that right there is something that it may sound small, but when you're at the front of a classroom and your tools are not working seamlessly, like your universe shuts down. So I'm really proud of the work that our engineers and our curriculum writers have put into delivering solutions that sort of cover this area. Now, on the next slide, I would like to just talk about mastery coding for a second, just in general, because what we also focus in on is not just the delivery, but are you delivering smart, necessary, and essential material that readies kids for a world that has been changed? And it hasn't been changed by COVID-19 exclusively. We've got artificial intelligence, we've got blockchain, we've got the bots are coming, we got self-driving cars. We have the fact of these technologies are changing every aspect of what constitutes workforce readiness. And we've got kids in high school right now that have taken no coding classes. We've got kids in middle school that don't understand algorithmic thinking or these principles. But as you look out at the landscape going forward, what would you constitute as essential education? And the idea of computer science moving from elective into absolutely core is the paradigm shift we're now, seeing manifest. And so I'm so determined to help elementary schools and educators, this next iteration of kids that goes through our schools, to make sure that they develop that computer science literacy that is going to unlock the opportunities of the decade ahead.
Fantastic. And this is absolutely, we all can relate to it. We all have kids, we all see what they're doing, and we want them to be better prepared so that they can continue to work no matter what the ways of jobs go. Super fantastic. Now,
there's one more thing I'd like to bring up, Chris, also, is the notion of we take all comers. Okay, like it would be preposterous to be like, oh, you're in 5th grade, you haven't already learned about loops and arrays. Too late, right? It's ridiculous. So if students have never had any experience with any computer science content, we can start there. If they're ready to go to those more sophisticated levels, we scale accordingly. But more significantly, it's the same that can be said for the classroom teacher. In a multidisciplinary classroom, the teacher's history, science, math, English, right, aside from the socio-emotional aspects and things like that, to expect that they're able to carry the weight of also understanding all these new technologies in computer science, that can be too much. So we've designed all our curriculum to ensure that a teacher with no prior experience in teaching computer science can be successful. Like we like to think of, we provide a hot cup of cocoa and a nice warm chocolate chip cookie. That's your experience. And I know that Olivia and Kara will speak more to that as we go through the rest of today.
Wonderful. And if obviously anyone has more questions for Alan about mastery coding and obviously overall curriculum, please feel free to reach out. There's obviously questions at the end of the webinar we can ask Alan. So awesome. So now I'm going to bring on Kara Ball, who is a State Teacher of the Year Award winner, a state finalist for the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching, and a STEM education specialist. Welcome, Kara. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me.
So Kara's going to talk to us, tell us a little bit about, really, I think your experience as a real award-winning STEM teacher having to do this, right, without this type of curriculum. Tell us again about, sort of your experience, what's been super important to you, what's influenced your perspective, and what is now really needed to, carry forward what Alan was just talking about.
So as you mentioned, as an a K-5 elementary STEM teacher, first off, those programs are kind of unheard of. Most of the time, STEM education is taught at the secondary level, once students get the ability to self-select courses in STEM, rather than this idea that we should be exposing all students to STEM opportunities. And I think that's one of the biggest disservices that we're doing, this idea that we want to educate the whole child by exposing them to art, music, and PE, as well as every content area subject, with the idea that we recognize that not everybody's going to become an artist or a musician, but we want them to have an idea of where their strengths lie and what their interests are in order to select those courses when they get to the secondary level, yet we aren't doing that for STEM education. And that was my push for where my program came from, was the necessity to set that groundwork and establish that foundation for future success at the secondary level. And one of the big areas that I focused on was computer science and computer science essentials. Like, what do my students need to learn at the elementary level in order to be successful when they get to the secondary level, and to know that they can take computer science courses and they won't just be beneficial if they decide to become a programmer or a coder, but that they're applicable to all aspects of their life. We all realized very quickly in March that all of a sudden technology and being able to be digitally literate and being able to utilize technology for learning happened overnight. And though most of us adapted very well, there's still huge gaps in what our kids need to know in order to be successful, and no matter what that future looks like. And the benefits of the CSE, the Computer Science Essential Program that we've been working on, is this idea that we can start with unplugged learning. So you don't necessarily have to have a computer, be using technology to understand the principles of block-based programming. And that we can also teach those core principles of digital citizenship as part of the program, and that there's no prior knowledge necessary either for the students or the teachers in order to be able to engage with the coursework.
And so, like, if you had something, yeah, so here's some of the components, right? It's like, what's critical in, what is provided? What would you like to highlight here?
And so you mentioned, like, if I had, and that's the thing, is I didn't have, there was nothing like this available. So I was creating those things from scratch, which is where I got involved with Mastery Coding, because if I was doing that, I recognized in many teaching strategies that other people would benefit from it as well. And I use a 5E lesson plan model because that's what I used in my STEM classroom. And it's the idea that we aren't just telling the students what to do, but rather they are a part of the learning experience, and it's more student-centered than teacher-centered. And like we mentioned, again, you don't have to know anything about coding, neither do your students. We provide you with everything that you need. So whether that be the teacher planning guide, the handouts, the slide deck that follows the lesson sequence for you, the resources in case you want to share with parents about what they have been doing, and everything that we've designed within these lessons align to not only the next generation science standards, but the ITSE standards, and the Common Core and Math ELA connections are also included in that as well. And it's this idea that over the course of the lessons, you start to gain the confidence and the skills and start to see yourself as somebody that could be taking those secondary level courses in computer science.
And so do you see this as the possibility of obviously both exposing kids at this early level, but also creating a new generation of teachers, right? That have that this is that right? Like, what do you see as the future here? What would you like to see?
So what I would like to see is opportunities for students to experience and to determine for themselves whether it's for them or not, rather than withholding that all together and saying, kids are too young to do this. My elementary students walk out of my school building and go home and interact with better technology than we have in most schools. And in fact, most US schools don't even offer academic computer science courses. They offer maybe how to use technology, but not necessarily a course on exactly what that means and the foundational aspects of computer science. And, at the elementary level, there are really huge benefits for why you need to be offering CSC. And these are just a few of them. So we know their future success is going to be dependent on their ability to not only utilize technology, but potentially to be able to create it, and more importantly, to control that. And we realized very quickly in March that that's an online learning platform, whether it's hybrid, in-person, AB schedule, or fully virtual. Our students need to understand how to do that. That's college or career. I'm currently doing my PhD program online because of the pandemic, and the program's going to continue that way, and I decided to stay online. But I had the skill set to be able to do that. My career uses technology continuously, and no matter what the students do, that will be the case as well. Problem solving. Alan had mentioned, the logic, computational, algorithm thinking. That's not just applicable in computer science, that's beneficial in mathematics, social studies, ELA. Being a problem solver is a 21st century skill that we want our students to have no matter what they do. And then digital literacy, what are your behaviors online? Are you being a good citizen? Can you collaborate with others? And are you being safe? And then the equity gap, which we've been working on an additional program to come out soon, where we focus on this idea of underrepresented groups, women and minorities, and how can we get them better representation, as well as addressing those gender stereotypes that come in the tech world, providing access to all students and recognizing that that's a huge equity issue, especially in this day and age of digital learning, as well as being inclusive. This program is for all students. And that's the big message here, is that it's for everybody. And how do we not only encourage everybody to stay involved, but how do we teach our students to be great allies and to encourage others to stay involved?
Fantastic. And now, just as a quick reminder of everybody listening, stay tuned for what Kara just said. We will be having future webinars specifically around this equity and sort of gender gap. And, you know, we're definitely super passionate about that. So stay tuned for some updates on that. So what else, you know, before we, you know, final thoughts? I think this is great stuff. Obviously, if you have questions for Kara, exactly her experience, I mean, I think is so exciting, like how passionate you are really about like really trying to introduce this to kids early on, because this is like a journey that needs to not start like at the end of high school, but at the beginning, right?
It's just too late. It's too late to wait for that, especially for my female students. So my research tells us that I lose them in 3rd grade and I lose them in 6th grade. So if we're waiting until middle school to offer them their first computer science opportunity, my students are already done. My female students have no interest. If 6th grade is their last opportunity, and that's the second huge wave of them, you know, losing interest in it. And there are many, many factors as to why our girls don't want to stick with it. But the number one is those gender stereotypes. You know, everything tells them that they can't, that it's a male-dominated industry, that it's there for the boys and not for them. So if we can show them early on that it's for everybody, then not only will society benefit, but the economy will benefit. Women make up almost 50% of the world's population. They hold 50% of the workforce. We are missing out on so much innovation by not representing that community in the area that's moving the country forward economically.
Wow.
Hey, Kara, can I ask a question? Because as a male, is there a way, like I've heard you talk about this concept of allyship, you know, because I know you well, you're not demonizing the guys here, but often like people like me sit here like, well how can I help, right? Do you have any just quick thoughts on that?
So my first thought is, so I'm doing my PhD on women's studies and STEM education. And the thing that was most surprising for me in all of the research that I've done is the number one factor that shifts females to remaining engaged is a positive male role model. And that can come in the form of both a parent, a teacher, and classmates, because those classmates ultimately become your coworkers. So we have to teach our male students how to be supportive and encouraging of these skills and abilities of their female classmates in order to keep them engaged. And that's one aspect of our Equity Gap programming, is how do we develop allyship, not just in the area of gender, but across all areas of equity and accuracies. How do we do that? Because if you're an ally in one area, you're likely to be an ally in other areas. And it's giving the skill set. And that's a part of the social emotional learning as well. You know, if we're teaching kids how to be empathetic, how to collaborate, how to empathize with others, and how to take into consideration different perspectives, then they're going to benefit from it all around. It's a win-win for everybody.
And that's what I think is so important to mention, because it's not just about computer science, you know, education. There is so many other ancillary benefits, right, that will help kids function and be successful later in life, right?
Absolutely. And it's this multidisciplinary approach that our coursework takes, this idea that nothing is standalone, that they're all interrelated, and each of them benefit off of each other, because that's the way it is in the real world.
Wow. I think we could keep going and going. So obviously, if anyone has other questions, of course, for Kara, please, you know, type them in a chat. We'll get to them as much as we can. So next up, though, I'd like to bring up our next speaker, Jessica Moreno, who is a social studies educator and a parent advocate in Title I schools, specifically Houston ISD and Fort Bend ISD. Welcome, Jessica. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris, for having me today. What I wanted to do today is kind of just give a high-level overview or perspective from a teacher. So we know that COVID changed everything in instruction after basically spring break of this year. And in my opinion, for the better. Yes, of course, I missed my students tremendously when I didn't have that one-on-one interaction. But the things that me and my cohort of teachers learned how to develop our virtual capabilities was just, to me, outweighed the bad for a bit. But we know that at this point, we have to take responsibility for our students' virtual learning through digital literacy and digital responsibility. And so we talked to that concept of having the opportunity to grow our kids. So not only today will we be, it is vitally necessary, we're going to be moving into an arena in which in the future, this will be a big portion of our instruction.
And so obviously there's the digital literacy. So there's a number of components here, right? There's the comfort in being digitally literate, and then there's obviously the safety and the security component of it, right? And how important is that to you as an educator and the parents and everyone else?
One of the things that I constantly heard from my parents were, my child knows how to turn on a computer. They know how to play video games. But we as teachers and we as people who are trying to develop this digital literacy and cybersecurity for students know that it is more than just being able to turn on a computer and how to navigate the internet. We know that there are risks that kids take going online. But my mistake was just because a kid knows how to do that doesn't mean that they know how to use technology in the appropriate way. One of the things that we have to focus on as teachers is we are being asked to deliver instruction. We're delivering it through Google Classroom. We're delivering it through Microsoft Word and all these different ventures. But many of us have single sign-in logins for district approved or district purchased software. However, we then as teachers have found incredible resources like BrainPop and iCivics, and those all have their independent logins. But I know if you ask any of your teachers, how many hours a day or how many minutes a day did they spend resetting passwords? So, one of the things that we have to teach kids is not only do they have to learn about how to use the different softwares, but how do we protect ourselves once we do get on that software? One of the things that we did as a school is we actually had to have a webinar for parents to teach them about digital safety. And can I tell you that that was one of the things that I was most proud of this past semester, and then we held another one during the summer, is that we were able to educate parents about digital safety because they too were under the impression that their kids knew how to do everything. But we also have to understand that we have to deliver this through an age-appropriate environment, because me as a content teacher, it's not just about teaching social studies, but it's teaching them about how to be a 21st century learner in today's environments.
And now how about, as you talked about, again, parents, right? So obviously the role of parents is critical, right, in a variety of ways. So what's been your perspective?
So, what I did this year was science department, they talk about cross-curricular. Science was talking about carbon footprint. And when I started getting into teaching virtually, I asked the students, we gave them a basically fillable PDF, and we asked them to do not what is your carbon footprint, but what is your digital footprint? And when we asked these kids, I was amazed. I asked them, write it, draw it, do whatever you want, meme it out, do emojis. And to see how the kids filled that PDF with everything that they did online surprised us. And what I then asked the kids to do was share it with their parents for an extra 10 points on their quiz. That's what prompted that parent conference, that parent training that we did. But we are in a position where we have to be able to help our parents understand the vital necessity of keeping our kids safe and what are their responsibilities. I'm not asking my parents to teach my students. I am asking them to be basically to monitor students, but to do that, we have to help parents out in being able to help their children with moving into this, shall we say, virtual learning, hybrid learning environment. And I think the more we communicate with our parents, the more that we share how they can be partners in their child's success is only going to benefit us all. And one of the great things that really came from this was that we had parents come back and tell us, wow, I just didn't know. I thought they were being taught this in school. But we know a lot of us are teaching it during the 30-minute ancillary section, we might have the Digital Awareness Month and we give a 30-minute lesson. But guys, today's the day that we have to commit to teaching all of our students about this very important aspect of cybersecurity and also how to navigate their coursework that's coming up this fall.
And now the good news, of course, so obviously it's about the funding for all of this. And I think that's the other big insight, of course, is that there is available funding for this. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So, well, Chris, you know, I beg, borrow, and steal. Right now, I'm so excited with all the sales coming out for all the crayons and rulers. I'm just a nut about that. I love the smell of a fresh eraser. But, you know, we're at a point where teachers have invested a lot of money in their classrooms. But this type of project takes more than, shall we say, a PTA bake sale or me getting kids to sell world's finest chocolates. But one of the things that we know is that through the various title programs, there is a component in which they are highly encouraging 21st century learning, digital acquisition, and especially in our Title I funds, they are really actively promoting having our students become very computer literate, and cybersecurity is another component. But not only that, part of your funding when it comes to title money is to be able to have that homeschool connection. And the homeschool connection is what we talk about, is incorporating our parents into our children's learning. And here's your checkoff to say, did you incorporate the parent component with our families? And I say yes. Now, the other thing is I went online and I looked up some other ones, but I really found this innovative technology experience for students, which was a really interesting grant opportunity that I was going to share in a link later as we send it out. One of the things that how I promoted and am in trying to get mastery coding further footprint, shall we say, in our schools is I applied to a PT foundation grant for our school district, and then told the principal if would commit to matching what I got in the foundation, that I would then be able to service at least one grade level, possibly 2 grade levels at our school. Because like Kara is that she's working, I work with both 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and she's right. Once we get to that 6th grade, those kids are taking robotics, but our general population of students doesn't have access to this information. And if they missed it in elementary school, we have to be able to provide a concrete source for them. So I really advocate this being a environment where we can push this into the elementary school and have a solid curriculum, as opposed to a day here or a day there in which we teach technology and rest on our laurels that kids know how to turn on a computer and play video games.
Wow. Well, this is fantastic, Jessica. Thank you so much for your insight. Again, if everyone has specific questions for Jessica, feel free, of course, to type them into the chat. We'll get to as many as we can. Of course, after the webinar, all of us are available to meet one-on-one with anyone who has questions about the curriculum, and again, about how it can be delivered in the current environment, because we don't know whether it's going to be hybrid, virtual, or classroom. So either way, we can help you to deliver on those needs. So next up, I'd like to introduce biologist, STEM expert, and mastery coding curriculum writer, Olivia Dobbs. Thanks for joining us today, Olivia.
Thanks for having me. Hey, everybody. Nice to meet you.
So Olivia's going to walk us through. So share us the lesson plan and what you have prepared that people are going to actually be able to use.
Of course. Alrighty. So we've designed this curriculum to be an easy lift for both the teachers and the students. We teach important fundamental concepts early on, so your students can excel in more advanced coding courses later on. Throughout this course, we also teach students core digital citizenship principles and the essential computer science foundations they need in a world changed by technology. The concepts listed on this slide are just some of the concepts we cover in our course. Along with these concepts, our course also comes with some free Scratch activities, which will definitely help your students learn even more about coding logic. Scratch, if you don't know, is a visual block-based programming language that helps students reinforce fundamentals as well as prepare them for more advanced coding later in life. But what I'd really like to do today is actually show you what our course is like. We chose a lesson from our cybersecurity unit, which is the first unit we teach in our course. We teach this before anything else because we understand that our current climate makes it so students need to use a wide variety of online tools, and their safety should certainly be a priority. As Jessica mentioned, we also take into account the necessity for remote learning materials. I'll show you all how we do that in just a bit. So to access this lesson, all you need to do is go to masterycoding.com and then select the Elementary School Computer Science from the curriculum drop-down menu. Once you get here, you can scroll down all the way past all these cool resources and you'll find the free sample lesson at the bottom. After the 3 clicks, you can have the lesson plan, slides, and your handout ready to go. In this course, we use the 5E lesson plan, which is a well-organized way to teach students information, along with keep them interested and make sure what they're being taught actually sticks. To make it easy for teachers, we put all of the most important info at the top of the first page. As you can see, we have the title, the materials needed, the unit it belongs to, the estimated time, and even the ISTE standards. As you can see, the only materials needed for this particular lesson plan are the worksheets that we provide with our course. You'll see that worksheet in a bit. Note that sometimes this section also requires basic classroom supplies like colored pencils and such, but we keep the materials required to a minimum, so it's easier for teachers to use. And then below this section, we have even more information on the lesson. This section covers what information is the most important for students to learn, what vocabulary is included in the lesson, and how the knowledge learned can apply to career skills when these students do grow up and eventually enter the workforce. Each of our lessons then begins with an engage section like the one we have here. We split our sections into 3 columns. The first column on the left lets you know important information, like how long the section will take. The middle section is instruction for the teacher, and then the final column on the right lets the teacher know what they should expect their students to be doing. Now, at this point, you might have noticed the words slide 2 and slide 3 here. This is actually a reference to the bundled slides that we attach to help as an engaging visual guide. In our engage sections, we get students excited about the lesson by adding challenging activities and questions that rely on their previous knowledge. This lesson, for example, has students recall what they do to stay safe as they cross the street. Once students do share their previous knowledge, this lesson transitions to why safety when crossing a street is important. In the next section, the students make the connection between staying safe while crossing the street to staying safe online. And then after that, we transition over to our explain section, where the teachers introduce new information to their students. In this lesson, the section walks students through listening to their gut feelings to make smart choices about the websites they're on, and also what to do when something doesn't feel right. After this, we have a quick review of the materials and a fun activity follows for the students. You might have noticed on this page that we do have a couple icons in this section. We use these to communicate to the teachers what path they should take in our lesson, depending on whether they're teaching this lesson remotely or in the classroom. All of our lessons supply this. So no matter what schedule you have in the fall, you'll be able to continue through this course without any interruption. All of our materials can be applied to both remote or live, unless noted by these icons, and both alternatives that we offer will get the same point across to students. For both on-site and remote learning, we supply a pre-made worksheet for your students. Worksheets like the one I'm showing off are provided for all of our lessons. Going back to the lesson plan, lastly, we have the evaluate section, which serves as a way for teachers to ensure that students understand what they were taught. This section reviews the important stuff and then asks questions that the students will be able to volunteer to answer and discuss. And then at the very end of our lesson plans, we provide additional activities for students. Each lesson we have has an English, a math, and a science activity, and also an additional activity that will elaborate on the material taught. We also have a section below that for self-reflection that you can use to take notes and even use to let us know if anything needs to be improved. And there you have it. That's what our course is like.
Excellent. Wonderful. So obviously, everyone, you can see how comprehensive it is. And again, as Olivia said, those resources are super available. All you have to do is go to our website. We will, as I mentioned at the top of the webinar, be sending them out to you as well via email, so it's easy. But there are a lot of resources on our website, so encourage you to go there, get them. So yeah, now we have, a few minutes left, but I want to toss it back to Alan real quick. Yep, perfect. Obviously, here's the link, of course. We'll be sending it to you an email. Again, masterycoding.com / elementary school computer science. You can download that sample lesson plan. But obviously now, if you have any questions, you can start sort of thinking about them, type them in the chat. But I want to kind of toss it back to Alan real quick. Just for a couple of questions that probably have kind of come up in your mind, just in terms of, first up, the usual, what about cost, Alan? How does this all work?
Yeah, so thanks, Chris. And, before I just answer that question, I want to say that to be a successful educator, there's no lone wolves in this type of thing. It takes a team. And I really got to say, I'm so proud to work with Kara and Jessica and Olivia, and there's so many people behind the scenes. But if you're paying any kind of close attention right now, I've been doing this a really long time, and I couldn't be more proud of the work that we publish and the tools that we're offering, because this stuff works and this stuff is needed. And this stuff right now is, I only wish that we could, when Jessica talks about the socioeconomic equity gap, and Kara talks about, like the equity gap and things like that. The idea of, here's a lesson plan, like go kick the tires on it. Olivia just showed you, here, whether remote, virtual, this and that. We're so super proud. We encourage, we want. The kids need this stuff. The parents need this stuff. They almost don't even know what they don't know in so many ways. So for everybody who kind of is paying attention right now, the idea of a shift has occurred. And it's COVID-19 when, it's funny when Jessica mentioned like the silver lining, like the upside to this right here, the idea of this, as I used the word paradigm shift earlier, like we're not going back. There's the fourth industrial revolution that demands that the knowledge we're speaking of is taught to our kids. And, the idea of other countries, like they get this right here. That's another thing. Like we're like, so often we're like, we're America, we're number one, woohoo, right? We ain't number one. We ain't number one by any stretch of the imagination. We need to pull the fire alarm on the urgency. This is not something to take back to a committee and have 50 people weigh and maybe we implement in 2024. We're going to be losing kids at every juncture that we do not sort of, bring this with a sense of urgency. So, collectively, that kind of like that's sort of what is the first thing. As far as price goes.
Well, I was going to say, Alan, to that point, right, we've removed the barriers, right? So we've not only created a curriculum that can be delivered no matter if you're virtual, hybrid, or in classroom. We deliver curriculum that works, right? That actually delivers results. It's authentically prepared by real educators, right? And then the third, which you're about to talk about in terms of affordability, this is not something that, and there's funding available to support it as well.
I mean, yes, Chris, there's no doubt that as a company, we understand that accessibility is everything. And affordability provides accessibility. There's everybody who sees the cost of our curriculum is like, that's all you guys charge, right? It type of thing. Because the idea is that we want to get this in the hands of as many people as possible. And of course, there's things like if we have entire districts that consider the onboarding, and we give even further price breaks and things like that. But simple school site principle, this is like discretionary budget type of affordability right here. It's not like the school board's got to ratify this and that, because we understand that the more bureaucracy that's engendered by our pricing, we're here for the kids. We're here for the teachers. These teachers, a lot of the reading, when Kara talks about how these teachers are cobbling together their own lesson plans, they take a little bit of this, they take a little bit of this, they take some open-ended resources, the OER, and they put it all together and they makeshift it type of thing right there. Like, the idea is eliminate that, liberate the teacher to go be successful, right? We've got the lesson plans, we've got all the assessments, we've got, all the tools the teacher needs so they can go spend the time working with the kids. That right there is sort of the entire schema, if you would.
And I think just one thing I wanted to make clear to everybody, you said it, is the fact is that, sure, this can actually be, of course, purchased at the district level and rolled out to all of the schools within the district. But obviously, it can just start with at the school level, and we've made it super easy to do that.
Absolutely. And so it just sort of we try to meet educators where they are. So this curriculum, as Olivia sort of mentioned, it can, be supplemental. That sort of takes over a day a week for the entire year, 2 days a week for the entire year. Or if you want to just do a full quarter of like computer science every day, whatever, it's meant to be malleable, because one size fits all fits nobody. Right? So the idea of, we're not here to tell you how to teach. We are here to outfit you with top quality tools to be successful. And in that's why the low floor, high ceiling approach I spoke about earlier, right there. That's why, you see that we've brought in content area experts with real classroom experience that have taught this and done this, and we use best practices. You've heard research. We sort of try to be a deeply comprehensive answer. But the other thing is, we don't pretend to have all the answers. Next year, there could be some new things, right? So we iterate every year. I will tell you this, though, that we have some of the top thinkers in computer science education on our team, and we are educators coming to technology as opposed to technologists coming to education. So at the front and center is, what does the student need? What does the teacher need? And that's always, so we're very myopic about that.
That's fantastic, and that's a great point. So I think at that point, it's great to, if we have some questions, we can go around a little bit. I think maybe, first like to throw it back to Kara real quick, and just see if she, again, her comment on, what's your perspective, Kara, on everything sort of Alan just said? What do you see is sort of the future of things? What do you think is sort of what our goal should be as educators?
I love the phrasing that he used about, it's not the technology coming to us, it's about like us coming to the technology. Like, teachers use technology all the time, and we're constantly having to stay up to date with whatever is the latest, greatest, and best. And a lot of times we don't provide that support necessarily to our teachers. I'm also a school administrator right now, so I walk both lines of having been in the classroom for the past 13 years to now being an administrator, and realizing that oftentimes we throw things at our teachers and expect them to be able to pick it up really quickly because they're lifelong learners and they're incredibly resourceful, and that's what teachers do. But one of the things that I started to learn when I started to do computer science with my students was where my own skill gaps were. And since then, I've continued to take some computer science courses. So being a learner alongside of my students is also an incredibly beneficial experience when you're starting to dive into these essentials and realizing where your own gaps are. The other thing I wanted to chime in with what Jessica was saying is the importance of providing resources and support to parents. One of the biggest things I would say is they don't know what they don't know. And the amount of times that I have caught my students doing things outside of school on technology that was not appropriate, that their parents were completely unaware of because they didn't even know it existed. Like if I'm bringing up TikTok to them, they're like, what? Like a clock? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like your 8-year-old kid is making videos and sharing them on a worldwide platform that also say their location, say their age, and show your home address. But they don't know that that's not safe. And it's just, we have to teach them how to do that because the parents aren't. And then we have to tell the parents to stay up to date and to keep on track of this because they don't know. You know, these things didn't exist when they were kids or when they were growing up, but it's like technology is literally at the fingertips of our children and they use their fingertips to interact with technology, and it's going to continue to evolve at a rate much faster than parents and schools can keep up with. So if we can give skills that don't have a shelf life, that will not expire, that the kids can use to adapt as long as, you know, as quickly as the world is adapting, is what we want the kids to have basically. And technology is that. We have it's here to stay. It's going to change. We're going to become more connected, and we've got to show the kids how to use it and to be safe.
That's
and it starts with the essentials. Like it starts, the foundation is everything.
And what would you say, I think real quick, you have so much great insight. It's like, do you feel like it feels overwhelming, I think, to everyone in different roles, right? Whether you're an administrator, whether you're an educator, whether you're a parent, and certainly as a kid, all of these things feel a bit overwhelming. So I guess, how do you speak to like, how are we helping people overcome that overwhelm feeling? Because again, I'm sure as a teacher, you know, like again, you often feel like, you know, the district saying more keeps getting pushed on your plate a little bit.
Yes, and nothing gets taken off of the plate. I think because we present it as a whole package. Like I know one of the biggest stressors for me as a classroom teacher was having to write my objectives and essential questions on the board. We provide that for you. Like you don't have to go through and weed through the lesson to figure out what students' takeaway is. We give that to you. You don't have to identify the standards. If you have an administrator who's reluctant to adopt this type of program, we give you all of the actionable things that you need to present in order to get them on board with it. Like you want Common Core? We've got that. You want next generation science standards? We've got it. You want the ITSE standards? No problem. We'll connect it to digital citizenship. We'll tell you a career connection for why this is important. We'll make it as authentic and relevant to your students as possible without being a burden to your elementary teachers' already limited planning time.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. And I think you could probably answer this question, but I want to bring Jessica back in real quick. So Jessica, this is a real quick, just a question for you because you were talking about school supplies. So I think just further, you know, to what Kara was just talking about, just to be clear to everyone on the webinar, what do teachers need to deliver this curriculum? Do they need anything, you know, in their classroom to deliver this curriculum? You know,
the great thing is that, I mean, we as teachers are going to have a laptop, and for those of us doing virtual or hybrid learning, we can offer this opportunity via the web, via our platforms that we're using to be able to conduct these lessons. And so I have the tools I need. If I was in my classroom, I'd be able to project it. I'd be able to, if need be, download the sheets to work on it. We're all trying to be more green. So being able to have these accessible through the technology that many of our states are now providing for our students because of the nature of COVID, it's really, we're really giving them tools that they can use today, right now. And another little side note I wanted to make was that yesterday when I was preparing and thinking about this, I also shared one of the lesson plans with a special ed coordinator at the middle school level. And she says, this is what we've been looking for. While it does seem more elementary, it does facilitate the learning and the readability for students who are in middle school, who are in our special ed classes that still need to have this information addressed and readdressed. So this CSE can hit lots of target populations.
So yeah, so a follow-on question for you, Jessica. Like, so if remote, you know, if you're doing remote is sort of the question, how much quote unquote class time do you predict you'd spend on this, right? So let's say school's going back, it's remote, right? And you were going to do the CS Essentials course, like how much, virtual class time, and maybe this is an Olivia question,
Okay.
but I'm asking you, Jessica, what's your thought there,
So my current district is going to be doing all middle school and high schools will be teaching, shall we say, the core content at the same time every day. Then we're going to be given additional time to do social emotional learning, and then some other advocacy time. I could even see this incorporated into our social emotional learning, because we need to protect our kids. This is a big dynamic when we're transitioning over to this virtual learning, to incorporate this. I think that there's different times that we're going to be able to add this curriculum into our daily lesson. I mean, this is not necessarily an hour class. This, you fit it where you need it and how you want to deliver it. But I would love to be able to incorporate this into my advocacy class, which is only 30 minutes a day. But again, I have to do other things in advocacy, but I can take components of this and being able to deliver that instruction.
Got it. So hopefully that helps everyone answer the question. So you can have a sense, again, it's tailored, as Alan's saying in chat, to fit all of the schedules. So it's super flexible, right? You can choose how much quote unquote class time you want to devote to it. And it's really up to you, obviously, and what's best for your kids and what other curriculum you have to deliver. And that's sort of the balance, right? So let's see, I think we got just a couple minutes. Olivia, do you have any thoughts on how you feel, like how, I think what one thing I maybe want to, is we've made a lot of fun stuff. There's a lot of fun stuff in sort of the lesson plan, right? So do you have any thoughts on, how teachers and what you're seeing there? Anything that you want to share, Olivia?
Yeah, I think it's super important that we make this course as fun as possible for kids. I actually took a computer course when I was in middle school, and what our teacher had us do was just, type out code. He told us what to do and we followed it, and it wasn't interesting. It certainly, when I was in middle school, made me not want to look into coding, because I was like, oh, this is just more typing. I don't want to do that. But with our course, we add a bunch of fun activities. We focus more on learning the logic. So yeah.
So we want our kids looking at code like you're looking at the turtle in that picture of you that we have.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like with delight and wonder and what's possible,
Yeah, that's the goal.
That's how we look at this curriculum.
I'm always telling Olivia, I'm like, does it have to be so fun?
I would also add that it teaches the why. Like, why are you learning this? Like Olivia, I was in a middle school computer science class, and all we did was learn how to make formulas for an Excel spreadsheet. And I was the only girl in that class. And it was always like that for like 3 years, until I was like, all right, I'm done. I don't see myself in this programming. Nobody looks like me. No one represents females in this. And like, why am I doing this? And why is this beneficial? Like, no one could tell me why I needed to learn this skill. And I think the authenticity of the fact that we include career connections and real world application tells not only the students, but more importantly, teachers and administrators, like, why this matters now.
Yeah. And I don't know about if you get that, Kara, as a teacher, where the kids often, I hear as a parent, when they're studying some math subject, like,
yeah,
why do I need to know this? Like,
yeah, and there are some times when I can't explain it, but in computer science, I can always justify the need and the why, and also being able to tell them that, like, I don't know what your future will look like. Like, we can all say in this instant that the future is very uncertain, but we are guaranteed to have students interacting with technology. So it needs to be an essential component of any education plan that schools adopt going forward.
Wonderful. And I guess just sort of final question, I'm going to throw this to you, Jessica, about parents, right? Because, there's the parent involvement is so critical in so many ways, to both support the kids at home, to also, push schools for more of this type of education. I guess, any thoughts on, again, how we are helping educators with parent communication to both really meet the needs of the parents have and get the parents to help us, to help the kids? What are your thoughts on how do we really help parents?
first of all, we do provide some components within the curriculum, but one of the things is that I love when my students, parents email me or text or, well, Google call me. They tell me, they ask me, my son said something about your class today. And half the time it's not even about what I was really teaching about. Like, so let's say, for example, we talked about voter registration and our ability to vote, and that a parent would call back or email me and ask me about voter registration. You see, and then me be able to share that information. I think that when things come across as user-friendly, point of use, that they're going to use it in their daily lives, kids go back and talk to their parents. And I think when we are able to provide useful information in a fun learning environment and something that applies to their daily life, technology, I think that just spurs ongoing conversations, and we have to take advantage of that to be able to support both our students and their parents' needs. We have a lot of parents who are very technologically literate, but maybe at times they don't know how to effectively explain to, shall we say, a second or third grade. And so us being able to provide those resources is only going to benefit us. And in reality, we're not only benefiting our student with virtual learning, but at times we're benefiting their brothers and sisters as well.
That's fantastic. Very well said. Wonderful, everyone. I think that is a perfect place to end our webinar on. Obviously, as you can see from our team, we're super passionate about this. We could talk about this for hours. So I'd encourage all of you who are in attendance, look out for the email follow-up with the recording of the webinar. Be sure to go to masterycoding.com and download the sample lesson plan and other resources. Please do share with a friend, a colleague, or two. We certainly appreciate that. And obviously do reach out. There's a number of ways to get in touch with us on our website. We're happy to have a one-on-one, discussion with you about what's right for your school, your kids, your district, and see how we can, again, prepare your kids for the future today. So with that, thank you for our fantastic speakers, Alan, Kara, Jessica, Olivia, and thanks for everyone behind the scenes who supported us. Thanks for all of you for attendance. Have a great day. Stay safe. We will see you soon.
Thank you.